You know, it turns out Lane Kiffin was kind of right about the college football playoff all along.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast hosted by me, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we're previewing the Gator Bowl matchup against Duke with Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC. Plus, we're diving into why Ole Miss deserved that spot in this year's college football playoff. After all, Bama bias and South Carolina's late season hype dominated the committee's decision-making, leaving Lane Kiffin no choice but to speak up for his team. It didn't work out, but he was right. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer other great perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. So check them out. So I'm sitting here thinking, what is going on? And watching all these games, just like everybody else in college football yesterday. And Alabama absolutely looked horrible yesterday against Michigan. South Carolina did not look good against Illinois. And this was the talking points that I had going into the playoff meetings whenever Alabama was getting moved up 3 spots for beating Mercer. When South Carolina is crowing about how good and how elite they are after getting beat by 24 points by Ole Miss at home. And I was like, Ole Miss is undoubtedly the third best team in the Southeastern Conference this year, even over Tennessee. I think Ole Miss would have taken down Tennessee fairly easily as well. But Ole Miss, as it was probably the third best team, and they got left out of the college football playoff. And yes, I understand Kentucky, all of that stuff. But whenever you look at the group of teams that were in the, quote, discussion of what went on with the SMUs, the Miamis, the South Carolinas, the Alabamas, Ole Miss has shown themselves to this point through bowl season to be above all of them. And with a win tonight over a third-string quarterback in the Duke Blue Devils, Ole Miss has a chance to crow so much louder than anybody can possibly imagine. Now, I do get it. This weird anti-SEC media thing that is happening, I guess it came up as a thought to counteract the SEC bias, whatever it is. Who cares? But everybody wants to make bowl games about that game. Well, Ole Miss isn't about the SEC other than having the SEC patch on the uniform. Ole Miss is about not being able to survive Alabama bias for this playoff, because if Ole Miss was in the 11th spot that Alabama was in, Ole Miss would have made the playoffs and SMU would not. Alabama being in that spot, even though they probably deserve to be below Ole Miss and South Carolina, who they beat, and be down there with Missouri playing patty cake, they're sitting in the 11th spot because they're Alabama. They weren't a very good football team this year. They just weren't. South Carolina could be offensively challenged if you could take away what Lenore Sellers did well, which is run and scramble. Illinois did that. Ole Miss did that. These were two very flawed football teams. And yes, I get it. Ole Miss lost a game they should have won. I understand that. But when you group these teams together and it becomes a decision match between them, Ole Miss had the better resume and was the better football team than Alabama, South Carolina, Miami, and SMU. Lane Kiffin pointed that out on Twitter, and he has been the target of the anti-SEC crowd for weeks at this point, to the point where if Ole Miss wins, he gets to have the last laugh because he will have been right. It was a stand that Lane Kiffin made for his team, but he might be right about the college football playoff when all is said and done. So anyway, let's go to Kenton Gibbs with Locked On ACC in Thunderdome. Let's go. You know, I enjoyed going into Thunderdome with JJ Jackson so much that I want to do it again with my boy Kenton Gibbs on this show one more time from Locked On ACC. We're going to do a little Gator Bowl talk. this morning with the game this evening. Kenton, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm great as always, brother. I'm always happy to be on, man. I saw somebody mention it the other day, like, yo, you and that Steven guy keep getting into it on Twitter. I said, Steven's my brother from another mother. You don't have brothers if you don't get into a little bit of a sparring match with them every now and then. Ours just happen to be verbally, but I'm happy to be here. I'm always happy to be here. The Ole Miss fans show a lot of love and hospitality every time I come on this show. So,
yeah.
And it helps that every time I come on, y'all are favored by damn 30 points. It helps out a lot.
Yeah, that it's kind of nice the way that works out. But we played like Wake Forest and Georgia Tech, so it's all good. Before we get started, this was recorded after the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk playoffs, but I do think it's funny because Alabama absolutely looked like Alabama. They looked like they did most of the season this season, and yet everybody at ESPN wanted to keep moving up. They moved up 3 spaces after they beat Mercer. That's the kind of stuff that was going on with Alabama. South Carolina, Ole Miss beat South Carolina 27-3. They stole their lunch money. If that game would have been 8 quarters long, South Carolina would not have scored a touchdown. Yet, whenever all of the 12-team playoff talk was happening, it was Alabama or South Carolina. One of those 2 teams deserves to be in there, and nobody mentioned Ole Miss. And Ole Miss lost a total of 3 games by a total of 13 points, missed a kick at the end, lost a game in overtime, and a 1-score game in the Swamp. And all of a sudden, that was problematic, and it was over. Listen, all of the outsiders are going to be anti-SEC, and the anti-SEC stuff on Twitter right now is absolutely hilarious. Everybody is emptying their drafts right now. But they need to realize one thing real quick. Nobody is sticking up for the SEC at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
The SEC has done Ole Miss dirty for 2 decades in a horrible way. And that whole thing that happened with Alabama and South Carolina is another example of that. So we might defend what's going on, but that's only because we have the SEC patch on our jersey, Ken.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I look at this thing and I say, of those 3 teams, I could at least understand an argument for Ole Miss and for USC. Bama, I never understood argument. I'm sorry, Granny. I've had to apologize to my grandmother way too much. She's a diehard Alabama fan, and she believes I'm the reason her tie got kept out. I said, Grandma, if I had that type of pull, I wouldn't still be working another job, okay? David Locke checks ain't hitting like that yet. I love them, but they ain't hitting like that yet. So, it's a situation where I looked up and I said, you know what? I understand the claim. I disagree with it. I think that the playoff was selected right. However, if we were talking about teams that belong in, it sure as hell wasn't bad. You can't tell me a team that mustered up a mighty 3 points, not even a point per quarter against Oklahoma, deserved to be in. You can't tell me a team that lost to a team who lost to Georgia State. Georgia State. Come on, dog. Come on, man. You can't. If you're going to tell me Bama was going to lose to a team from the city of Atlanta, I would have said, wow, Hanks King and company really pulled it off. Wrong team. What? What are we doing here? So, I understand the arguments for SC and Ole Miss. I understand them. I disagree with them, but I can at least see where you're coming from. The Bama argument, put down that pipe. Put down. It's not good for you. That stuff is ruining your brain.
Listen, the hilarious thing is at the beginning of the season, I called Kalen DeBoer Ray Perkins over and over. Ray Perkins, he's following the bear, coming back in. This is following Nick Saban and coming in. It's going to be the same thing. I need to apologize to Ray Perkins. I am truly sorry because I have never. I don't know if I've seen an Alabama team look this inept at times, even during the DeBose and Shula eras. It didn't happen. This team was so hot and so cold. It's like at a certain point, they didn't pay their electric bill and their hot water heater just didn't work.
Oh, my God. That's a good one. Didn't pay their hot water. Oh, my God. I'm going to tell you. I say in terms of what I rank as like what's a good team, what's a bad team. I look at your highlights, but I also look at how consistent are you? From week to week, who are you? Because I like to liken a team to somebody you're in a relationship with, right? It's great to have the old lady that, oh yeah, when everything's going good, she's great. She might even buy you a car for your birthday. She's amazing. But then on Tuesday, you're like, It's 1 a.m. Where is she at? What's going on? You don't need that. Nobody's perfect, but you need somebody that's going to be consistent for the most part to where you can trust them. I couldn't trust Bama. Bama was the girl that many times you stuck sitting up like, babe, you said you was going to be home. You said you were having dinner with the girls. Your dinner started at 8. It's 2 a.m. Where you at? There was too many times that I was stuck saying, why is Vandy beating you? Why is Malachi Moore crashing out right now at the end of this game? What are we looking at here? The Tennessee game was the only one that I looked at today. That's a loss, but that's a damn good team. That is a good team top to bottom. That team's got some flaws, but overall, they're a very good team. I can look at it. But again, and again, I'm sorry, Granny. I know your birthday coming up too. I told you I'll stop. We agreed that after your birthday I would stop, and it's coming up, so it ain't here yet.
And the funny thing is, like, there was a couple of times in the Michigan game and the ReliaQuest Bowl to where they just got undisciplined penalties.
Yeah.
Everything that Nick Saban built and everything that made that program what it was, it's like they're systematically taking it apart to try and become something else. And being something else than Nick Saban has not been a formula to win college football games.
Yeah, and the biggest way that I would say they've been a different team from the Nick Saban era, even when they became a pass-heavy team, even when they start to go away from like we run a Python offense that just suffocates you over time. Even when they start hitting big plays, quarterbacks were getting the ball out their hand quick. Tua, Hurts, Young, it was still, even when they were taking deep shots, the ball was coming out quick. It just seems like Jalen Milroe holds that thing all day and tomorrow and is like, oh, I can make a play, I can make something happen. And we saw it as a result of the game today. 3 turnovers, 2 of them came after holding the ball for, much too long. So I look at this and I say, hey, we are not – Saban ain't walking through that door. Derrick Henry ain't walking through that door. Julio ain't walking through that door. That team may be fried, died, and laid to the side, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Greg McElroy isn't walking through that door.
hey, man. Jalen Milroe is better than Greg McElroy at his peak. Now his floor is much lower, but at his peak, he's better than Greg. He better than Greg.
You know what it looks like with Alabama. This is what it looks like, and you might see it. Alabama looks like that typical 3A high school football team where the best athlete plays quarterback.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. You're not wrong. Because it's like when you go to college, you're going to be a corner. You're going to be a receiver. But there's going to be those games where he just lights you up. He throws for 350 yards and rushes for another 125. But again, there are those moments where it's like, oh, that kid clearly ain't a quarterback. Yeah. Jalen Milroe is not exactly quarterbacky, as some in the media would say.
Yeah, the next time he throws hot will be his first.
Oh, oof, boy, I tell you, you're not wrong there.
So, anyway, when we come back, we are going to get in the Gator Bowl game tonight. I'm talking with Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC. Stick around for that. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that W, including betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many total points or how many points each team will score. It is absolutely thrilling. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. Kenton Gibbs with Locked On ACC, Steven Willis from Locked On Ole Miss, talking Gator Bowl. Now, what do we need to know in this Gator Bowl matchup from the Duke perspective that maybe we don't know about?
So I think that a lot of people underrate how good of a defensive mind Manny Diaz is. People know that he's a former defensive coordinator, and they may know like, oh, his defenses are slightly different from a lot of other college defenses. I'm telling you this right now. It is a bad matchup stylistically for a Lane Kiffin offense because there's a lot of RPO. There's a lot of, hey, what am I looking at pre-snap? That's going to dictate what I do to a higher level than most offenses. And there is nobody, I'll say definitely nobody in the ACC, maybe a few other teams in the country that are as good at changing the math, changing the picture post snap. So it's going to take some disciplined quarterback play, and it's going to take Ole Miss winning up front in order for them to make things happen in this game. Because again, in terms of how their defense plays, how swarming they are, how quick to react they are, how fundamentally sound this Duke defense is. Duke is known to be a bunch of nerds. They're very cerebral guys, that bunch. They understand football at a high level. So in this game, there will be a lot more coverages disguised. There will be a lot more blitzes where it's like, where the hell did that guy come from? Than most people believe. Now, the question that Ole Miss has to answer in that is, can our guys make decisions quick enough to, make that pretty much negate what's going on there? Can our guys, has Jaxson Dart, for however long he plays, has he seen enough of those disguises to where he's like, I know what you are. That's a 3 shell, but he's going to cover that flat. I've seen you plenty of times. I know where to go with this.
One benefit that Jaxson Dart and Lane Kiffin has is last year they played Penn State in the bowl game,
right?
Which means they would have game planned for a Manny Diaz defense, even though it didn't happen. And Ole Miss had a pretty good plan for that game. So I guess Manny Diaz, seeing exactly what Lane Kiffin wants to do, looking at that bowl game, would probably help him out a little bit as well. Who are some names on the defensive side of the ball that Ole Miss fans need to know?
Yeah, so there are multiple guys on the defensive side of the ball, and I apologize if I am naming guys who are going to be sitting out this game. But I'll tell you what, Ozzie Nicholas is one of those guys. He is always around the ball for Duke. I want to cite a specific play against NC State where Justin Jolie, tight end, he's a hell of a player. He was NC State's leading receiver. So in essence, what he does is he basically, and this isn't, I'm not saying that this was within the rules, but it happened. He went and put hands on Justin Jolie and just put him in the dirt while he was trying to run his route. He then goes from doing that to chase down the quarterback and force a fumble, all in one play. He is a hell of a football player. He's one of those guys that he's not a great athlete. He's a great football player. He's not going to test out running a 4.4. He's not going to bench press 225 30 times or anything like that. But I'm telling you what, when you look at Ozzie Nicholas against pretty much any running back in the whole 9 times out of 10, Ozzie is going to win that. In space, maybe a little different, maybe a little bit more pliable, but even then, Ozzie's a hell of a ball player. And he's number 55 in your programs, number 1 in striking fear in running backs' hearts. He's definitely a name to watch.
Is he a linebacker?
Yeah, definitely a linebacker. He's a guy that, again, I'm sorry, he's number 45. He's definitely a guy to watch. He's definitely a guy that you got to keep your eyes on. He is everywhere. He does everything for this Duke team in terms of taking away the middle hole when they like to go into their too high looks, in terms of running with backs man-to-man and all that, in terms of being a hell of a defender against the run. Ozzie has shown the ability to do it all at a high level this year. He's the heart and soul of that defense. And so if you don't know him, you may hear his name a lot, and you need to get ready to in this game.
How are they on the back end of the defense?
Yeah, so the back end is a very opportunistic bunch. There are guys who are going to take some risks. They're how do I put this? They're a Manny Diaz coach defense. Anybody who knows Manny Diaz coach defenses, there are going to be some big plays against them because they're going to take those chances. But I'll tell you what, those DBs, they got some pretty soft hands back there. One of them in particular, their safety, not the biggest guy in the world by any stretch of the imagination. But I'll tell you what, Terry Moore can absolutely get it done in terms of taking the ball away. He is a guy with some very, very soft hands, and he's very good at being that single high guy that, like, if you're not paying attention, tips and overthrows, the defense needs all of those. Terry takes that to heart. He takes that to heart because if Dart is going to be overthrowing it, if Simmons is going to be overthrowing it, if whoever is going to be in that quarterback is going to be overthrowing that ball, we could easily see him running the other way with it.
And on the defensive line, is there a defensive lineman that we need to know?
So the defensive line for Duke has been a group that I would say after losing R.J. Oben and all that, people thought, oh, man, what are they going to do? How are they going to find ways to generate pressure? How are they going to find ways to generate stops? And losing Aeneas Peoples and losing Dwayne Carter, who was a first-team All-ACC guy, People thought this group is going to be a shambles. They've got nothing. They've got nowhere. They're going to be lost as a unit. And yet a lot of young guys have come along and shown really, really good things for them. Wesley Williams being one in particular. He's a pass rush specialist. Okay. He is, again, not the biggest guy in the world, but when he is rushing, when he is coming off that edge, I don't know a bunch of guys that have a better get off than him. And then you've got Vincent Anthony Jr. I'm going to tell you what. That's a guy. He's a little bit more well-rounded than Williams. He can do a little bit more of everything. He's a much bigger body. He is a guy that when he gets around that edge, I'm telling you, he can be a little stiff in the hips, but he's so long, it makes up for it. Even when quarterbacks look like they got an angle on them, I have seen it. Again, when they played at NC State, all of these guys have made me have to have a very angry post-game personally. So I'm not telling you about things where I'm like, oh, I'm just box score watching. I watch the games. I watch these guys play. Those are definitely some guys that could be impact players in this.
All right, let's change over to the other side of the ball a little bit. And this is problematic because there's opt-outs all over the place in major places on the field. But let's start up front with the offensive line. Is it a good offensive line? I know they like to run the football a little bit. Can they control the game on the offensive line?
Now, can they control the game on the offensive line? I don't think so. I don't think they're that good up front to control the game. However, can they hold their own? Can they stalemate? Because you and I both know, Steven, we've been covering the game long enough to know football is all about changing the math. And can Duke's offensive line go 1-for-1 with Ole Miss? Yes, I think they can. Can they reestablish the line of scrimmage, create knockback from play to play to where defensive linemen are sitting in linebackers' laps? No, I don't believe that. But with that being said, it's Duke's temperament to say, we're going to run the ball, and then we're going to hit you with a deep shot. Now, some of that was by the effect of Malik Murphy, Malik Murphy is one of the most enigmatic quarterbacks that I have ever seen by way of 50 yards down the sideline on the frozen rope. He can do it. Asking to hit a swing pass, he starts shaking, crying, and throwing up. I don't know why, but that's just who he was. That's not the quarterback you're going to be seeing. But part of that offense and part of that flow was definitely the offensive line and Star Thomas. They had a special synergy going to where they could just suffocate teams.
Yeah, and Star Thomas got into the transfer portal a couple of days ago. I do not know if he's playing in the game. I think there's some conflicting reports of whether or not he isn't. I will say this. If he doesn't play in the game, I don't know how Duke is going to score in this game.
I mean this very genuinely, and Steven and I have had this talk in the past, right? I'm a big hater on hypothetical SEC teams. I really am. I'm never the guy that's like, oh, hypothetically, they're going to destroy them. It's not going to be close. Steven, you're absolutely right. If Star does not play in this football game, you and me both are wondering, because not only is Duke's starting quarterback and potentially starting running back in the portal, you also have, I believe, their third string / backup quarterback in the portal as well. So Henry Beelan is going to be one of the only active quarterbacks that they have on the roster. Lord forbid anything happens to him, they might have to go Wildcat the entire damn game with a backup running back or receiver or something like that, because I believe one of their receivers played QB in the past. Yes, for under Cutcliffe. That was like 2 coaches ago. Yeah. And I think that guy is opting out too. And he's one of their lead receivers. So you're looking at a situation where you are absolutely right. If Star Thomas doesn't play, again, this may be one of those situations where reality Ole Miss is just as good as the hypothetical here, because I struggle to see a path for Duke to not only win this game, but quite frankly, move the ball at a high clip with all the opt-outs they have. Yeah, and I'm just going to let you know right now. I mean, you follow me on Twitter. If Ole Miss wins this game, I'm going to be annoying on Twitter. I am going to be so annoying because everybody has been waiting to dunk on Lane Kiffin. After the playoffs, because basically all Lane was doing was campaigning that Ole Miss deserved to be in. Right. And everything's happened. It's like, oh, we're not hearing you, Lane Kiffin. It's like, you guys aren't paying attention. Ole Miss is a win against the third string quarterback away from him being able to scream the absolute loudest. Yeah. Well, I would say you not only need to win this game, Ole Miss needs to dominate. Yeah, this game needs to be a first round knockout where you can see from goal. Oh man, Duke is out they're outmatched, they're outclassed, they're outnumbered. You know, they need to. I don't know if you ever seen this before, Steven, but you ever see two guys get into a fight and one of them's getting whooped on so bad? He's like, hey, am I getting jumped? That's how bad this needs to look for Duke, for Ole Miss to beat their chest and say, hey, this is who we are. We belong there. Because like you said, you're playing against the third string quarterback. You're playing against a team who's losing their leading rusher. You're playing against a team that's losing multiple guys to opt-outs that are very meaningful players. So if this game is close against, Henry Beelan IV, with all due respect to Mr. Beelan,
which is a very Duke name.
Oh, it's extremely Duke. It's the most Duke name that I've ever heard. It's the most Duke name that I've ever heard. He definitely says, I'm calling my papa anytime an argument gets too heated. I'm calling my papa. The family lawyer will be on the phone shortly. But with that being said, this is definitely a situation where if Ole Miss whoops the wheels off them with what happened with Alabama losing, which we got into extensively, and those boys up in Columbia losing to Brett Bielema's fighting a
Listen, I think if Lane Kiffin would have behaved in a football game the way that Brett Bielema did, there would be congressional hearings.
Oh yeah.
If that happened, but Brett Bielema got in Shane Beamer's head so much, that game, Shane Beamer lost that game. He did. Yes. Brett Bielema had him just completely on skates mentally. And even to the point where on the sideline, they showed Bielema, he was just smiling because he knew exactly what he was doing and how mentally fragile Shane Beamer has been.
Anybody who knows me knows I try to be as consistent as possible. I'm a human, so there will be inconsistency. But I'm going to tell you, you know how I feel about Lane Kiffin. I love him down. I love me some Lane Kiffin. I love his antics. I love him. And I also love me some Brett Bielema. Fun fact, had Brett Bielema not left from Wisconsin to go down to Arkansas, and this is another reason I got it out for you SEC folks. I was supposed to be a Badger, Brett Bielema was my guy, The first time he saw me, he said, wait a minute, you're bigger than I thought you were, man. You look good, man. I said, hey, come on now. Don't buy me dinner first, buy me dinner. But in all seriousness, you're absolutely right. I mean, Brett Bielema got in his head from jump, and that, that game, one in which South Carolina clearly had the superior talent. This was a game where it was very clear they were outcoached. It was very clear the teams took on the temperament of the coaches, and the Illini looked poised. They looked like they were in control of that game in ways that they really weren't. In ways that, that was a one-score game for a majority of the game, and yet it just felt like South Carolina was frazzled the entire second half.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that game is the quarterback that beat South Carolina on that day was Luke Altmaier. He was an Ole Miss transfer after Jaxson Dart beat him out for the job. And the receiver that was eating South Carolina up all day was Zachary Franklin, who was at Ole Miss in 2023. So Ole Miss beat South Carolina twice.
Hey, listen, the Rebs have their rights to talk how they want to talk to USC. And again, Lane Kiffin can earn his way to talk to the nation how he wants in this game. Some people will say, hey, this game means nothing and all that good stuff. Me personally, I'm a person who still puts stock in the bowl games. I try to be as consistent as possible. And the way that the ACC has performed in bowl games, I have sat there and owned it. I have sat there and said, hey, the ACC looks terrible. We are getting beat up by a group of 5 teams. We are losing the teams that we should not be. We are losing the team. At the end of the day, I'm not about to sit here and say, oh, what the point spread if Toledo and Pitt played again. Oh, the point spread. NC State's playing ECU in 8 months. We'll see what the point spread is. The game is what it is. What happened, happened. And I own that. And just as I own that, I will also own giving Lane Kiffin, hey, he's the guy. His team was the only one that has a case if Ole Miss comes out and dominates in this one like I suspect they will.
All right, when we come back, we are going to talk about our final thoughts on the game, and we will mention how worried Alabama should be about that 5-day transfer portal window with Ryan Williams and Mbakwe sitting in there as well. We'll talk about that with Kenton in a second. Stick around. You know, there's nothing like the energy of being at a live game, the roar of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers squeaking on the court, and even spotting a few celebrities in the stands. I remember going to an NBA game a few years back, and the electricity in the arena was absolutely unforgettable. You can't replicate that watching on your couch. This year, I'm looking forward to catching more games live, and Game Time makes it easier than ever with their new Game Time Picks features. Whether it's basketball, concerts, or theater, Game Time helps you find the best deals on the great seats without the hassle of endless scrolling. I just hopped on the app to check out the tickets for an upcoming game, and Game Time Picks make it a breeze to find a super deal for amazing seats. Plus, the app showed me a panoramic view so I could pick the perfect spot. No guesswork, no surprises. And it's not just sports. Game Time also has incredible deals for concerts and comedy shows. I'm planning to grab a few tickets for a concert next month. And with all-in prices, I see exactly what I'm paying for. No hidden fees at checkout. Is Midland, by the way. I'm going to see them in February. What I love most about Game Time is their lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with event cancellation protection, your tickets are covered if plans change. It's the most flexible ticketing app I have ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time Picks feature. Download the Game Time apps, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. And Kenton, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier was that after the bowl games, there's a little five-day transfer portal window that pops open. The amount of tampering that Alabama is going to have to deal with their roster after that game. I mean, can you imagine how much money is coming in as in offers for Ryan Williams?
Oh, I'm going to tell you something. Ryan Williams could be the richest receiver in all of college football next year. He really could be. You talk about a playmaker, a dynamic guy, a guy that you know you're going to have multiple years with because he's a true freshman. Even if he wanted to leave, he could. He can't go to the NFL. So tampering is one thing, but tampering with a bag behind it is another. Okay? It's one thing to say, hey, Brian, they ain't going to win no championship over there. They ain't going to love you like we love you. You know, come on over here. If you ever want to see a college football playoff again, because eventually that Saban luster going to wear off. That's one thing. It's a whole nother to say, hey, ain't your mama tired of working yet? Hey, little brother he need a prime outfit. He want them Gucci shoes, right? He want them new Yeezy boots. Yeah. We got something for you. We got about 3 million reasons you need to come on over here. I think that those calls are going to be inevitable because Ryan Williams showed us he's electric, he's dynamic, and if it wasn't for a guy named Jeremiah Smith up in Columbus, he would be known as like, hey, there's none other that's close. He is by far the number one freshman receiver in the nation. So that 5-day window. If I'm DeBoer, I'm wishing and hoping and praying and whatever trick or treat or whatever I could pull out. If I got to tell him, hey, listen, part of my contract is yours, brother. Just stick around for a while. I'm going to do it because you're right. There are going to be everybody and their mama that's a contender is going to be calling for Ryan.
Yeah, and Mbakwe, the cornerback at Alabama, he is basically
Absolutely.
Travis Hunter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's another one that's like, well, he didn't play that much. He didn't do that much. Why is everybody going to offer him $2 million to play whatever? And it's like, that's going to happen. That roster that Nick Saban meticulously built over 15 years,
yes,
it is going to be ripped to shreds over the next 8 months, potentially.
Oh, absolutely. And you talk about all of the guys that they got that are going to be high name in terms of Williams and in terms of Mbakwe. They got multiple guys on that roster that people are going to be looking at. People are going to be screaming for. People are going to be saying, hey, we need this guy on our roster. He's the difference between a championship and nothing for us in terms of getting us some NIL pay. I am telling you right now, one of the players that I'm looking at, I can't remember his name right now, but it's a true freshman or redshirt freshman as well, the cornerback that sealed the Georgia game. He is going to be a hot button He's going to be another one of those guys that, even though he has some struggles at points this season, you saw the upside. You saw him have to go man for man. Hey, you locked on to their number one guy. What you going to do with it? And he showed up and showed out repeatedly. So there are going to be multiple guys from this Alabama squad that are receiving calls about that bag. And didn't Proctor already leave once? He just came back before the season started. Hey, more power to you. Get your money if they'll pay it to you. But I'm telling you, that squad, if I'm DeBoer, I'm having a full team meeting on the plane. Hey, guys, we write blank checks in Tuscaloosa. We write blank checks. All right? Before you go anywhere else, I know they're going to be calling you from Austin. I know they're going to be calling from Oxford, from Aggie Land, from all these different places. I know Bill Belichick, they said they're raising the money up to 20 out there in Chapel Hill. I know they're going to be calling you. You know, I know. Y'all want to go play with Lagway, but stick around for a while. Tuscaloosa's got a lot to offer you.
All right, so let's change back to the Gator Bowl real quick before we get out of here.
Let's do it.
This is what I'm thinking on this game. I'm thinking Ole Miss 38-10. That's a pretty conservative game. I think that it has a chance to get out of hand at halftime, and then after halftime it gets sloppy. And Duke scores a touchdown, and maybe Ole Miss only scores one. But I think the first half has a chance to get completely sideways. What do you think?
See, this is why I say that me and Steven are we brothers from another mother, you know, because I promise you, if I had known that he was going to go 38-10, I would have said my prediction to him before we got on there. Because the more I thought about this game, I hand to God. My prediction for this game was 45-10. That was my prediction. That was my exact. I think same score as you pretty much, and I think the same situation. I think that what happens is because, you know, you told me about Ole Miss guys having pitch counts and certain players, you know, exiting probably at halftime and whatnot. I think on the third string, Duke gets a touchdown or so. I do. I think that they may have to score all 10 against the second and third string guys. It's like, hey, Lane Kiffin knows you're transferring, but he's going to give you some time to put a little something on tape so that you can go ahead and you know, ask for your release and go elsewhere. But I don't see a world where Duke can keep up. I think that their defense keeps the first quarter close, but there's only so long that you can like kind of fight and hope and claw. And even the first quarter, I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss takes off, but I know that second quarter, the floodgates are going to open. Okay. The floodgates are going to open, and it's going to be more than the Blue Devils can handle. So if this game is competitive at halftime, credit to Duke. I would be shocked and surprised. Competitive after the first quarter, I could see that happening. That's what I most likely see happening. And then the second quarter, you get something crazy like a 24 to 28 point quarter.
Yeah, it kind of, to me, I keep thinking about the Ole Miss Arkansas game this year to where it was like 35-10 or something at halftime. I think that it could really get off the rails, and you do your walkout maybe the first drive of the third quarter, and you do just kind of a walk-off where Jaxson Dart comes out of the game and just gets his kind of curtain call and all that. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to say this. Jaxson Dart has meant a ton to Ole Miss football. You know what I mean? He has really been a really, really special dude, led this team to some very special places that I don't – and correct me if I'm wrong here. Has Ole Miss ever won 10 wins in 3 times in 4 seasons before, or would this be the first? It's back before integration when it happened last. So before people that look like me could enter the school was the last time. And I want y'all to take a thought about that, right? It's been quite some time. It's been a minute. So with that in mind, I really do want, and I'm not saying that Ole Miss fans don't give him his flowers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying make sure y'all give that man his flowers while he's on his way out, because, again, he was special, man. He was downright special for this team. And I don't think there could have been a better match for Lane Kiffin's offense than Jaxson at multiple points here. So, you know, I see that curtain call happening, and I see when he gets it, y'all better show that man every bit of love. Y'all better throw roses at his feet like it was coming to America. So, you know, before the season, before I let you go and get out of here, I made a comparison to Jaxson Dart over and over again. I said, he is this guy. And everybody argued with me with what he was. But I told people he might play a little bit differently, but he is Ole Miss's version of this quarterback. That quarterback is Connor Shaw. That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay. And I'm guessing you're saying from the standpoint of like Connor Shaw kind of
winning, leading,
brought them back. I was about to say
he brought them back on the map because that was a team that desperately needed. Kind of short South Carolina, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. He brought them back on the map because before we remember those years. There were some dark years in there for old South Carolina. So, I get what you mean. And I'll tell you this much. If the program ain't been to those heights in quite some time, right? If the program ain't been to those heights since before me and Steven could publicly call ourselves like brothers, right?
Right.
I would like to say, to the fans to appreciate him as like, hey, this is a one-of-one dude. He has really been a huge part of changing the culture because let's just be very honest, right? We are now talking about Ole Miss as a perennial contender. We are talking about Ole Miss as perennially floating around that like, hey, this is a playoff team. Even if they don't make it, this is a playoff caliber team, to which I'll agree with you on. I'll 1,000% agree Ole Miss is a playoff caliber team, and Jaxson Dart has had a major hand in that.
Yeah, and we'll see if Ole Miss continues. Like I said, we really like Austin Simmons and what does Lane Kiffin has built. Who would have thought that Lane Kiffin would have spent 5 years in Oxford?
Man, because every year, when that coaching carousel comes up, who's the first name always been? Is Lane leaving? Is Lane leaving? Lane's gone. And this year, it's been different. Have you noticed that? This year, I haven't heard nothing about, oh, this is the year. Lane's gonna go. And think about some of the jobs that were potentially available. People were asking, is Lincoln Riley still going to be USC's head coach at the end of the season? And nobody said, oh, Lane Kiffin, he's a Hollywood guy. Nothing to be better for him than Hollywood. So, it's a testament to what he's done at this program.
I feel like Lane has been replaced a little bit as far as national media clickbait fodder, where everything is prime now.
Oh,
no matter what happens, is he going to take that job? So I do think Lane kind of gets to just be Lane for a little bit. But, whenever Lane starts tweeting and all of that, it gets everybody's attention.
Yeah. Lane Kiffin is an easy guy. You and I are both media guys, have been doing this long enough to know, while it is important that we get some of substance, the bean counters want to see eyeballs, okay? And Lane Kiffin was an easy eyeball draw. And yet and still, with what he's built there and the consistency, and honestly, let's be honest, with how happy Lane Kiffin looks. Lane Kiffin generally has looked his happiest when he's trolling other teams. But he looks excited to be there day in, day out, and to do the little things at Ole Miss. So credit to the guys down in Oxford, man. Y'all have really – I don't know what it is about Lane Kiffin in Oxford. He seems to love it there.
Well, it helps that he's the king of Oxford. We'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC. Anything special going on this weekend?
Oh, no. Not for me at least. No, but seriously, these playoff games, man, don't take them for granted. These are going to be a slew of games. Some of them may be close, some of them may be blowouts, but I'm telling you, just enjoy the damn games, okay? It's always better to just enjoy. I know that Ole Miss fans feel like you have a gripe and feel like you have a right to be there and feel like you were jumped over. I'm not mad at you for that. I'm telling you for your sake and your enjoyment, okay? This is Ken speaking to you because I love you, baby. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the games, whether it's a blowout, whether it's a close game. Just enjoy some college football because we're about 3 weeks away? A month away from it being no more college football. And, as much as we like college baseball, Omaha ain't the same as the college football playoffs. It's just not.
No. Anyway, I appreciate it, Kenton. Take care, and thanks for coming on, buddy.
Always glad to be here for you, brother.
All right. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're going to have a pregame show a little bit later on today and an instant overreaction immediately following the game. Tune in for that. I look forward to it. Anyway, hotty toddy, everyone.